In this lesson, we're going to create an AWS Lambda function, and the function is going to resize an EC2 instance. So I'm on the AWS Management Console, and we're going to create our function here in Lambda. We also need an EC2 instance, so let's quickly launch the instance. I'm going to just launch an instance into the default VPC. I'm not worried about the name. The instance type is going to be a T2 micro. Then I'm going to change the key pair to proceed without a key pair, and that's it. I'm just going to launch my instance. So this is an instance running the T2 micro instance type. And here we can see it's pending and it's a T2 micro. All right, let's come back to functions. We're going to create a Lambda function. At the top here, we can author from scratch, use a blueprint, or a container image. We're going to author from scratch. I'm going to call this one Resize Instance. Next, we get to choose the runtime. Node.js 18 is chosen by default, but I'm going to choose Python 3.8. So Python 3.8 is the runtime framework, the language that's going to be used for this function. Architecture can stay as x86-64. Next, permissions. So permissions are really important with Lambda. We need to make sure that our function executes with any permissions that it needs if it wants to talk to another AWS service. So in this case, our instance is going to actually modify an EC2 instance. Now for now, I'm just going to create a new role with basic Lambda permissions, but you can choose an existing role if you wish to here as well. So let's just go ahead and create the function. It's going to create that new role now along with the function. Okay, so here we are. We have our function, and on the main page here, we can see that we're on the code tab, and there's a default hello from Lambda piece of code here. So some simple Python code. If we head over to configuration, here we can see permissions. We can actually click on the role, and that's going to open the role up in the IAM management console. Here we can expand policy name, and we can see that we already have permissions to CloudWatch logs. So that's really useful for troubleshooting purposes. It means that when we execute our function, information about that invocation is going to get written to CloudWatch logs. Great for when we have problems that we need to troubleshoot. So back in Lambda, we've also got the monitoring tab here. We can see some metrics on our function execution and the number of invocations and more information. We've also got a test function. Now, what we can do here is just create a simple test event. Just call this test event, and it's going to use this template, the hello world one. So let's just go ahead and save and then run the test. And what we'll see is we get a succeeded, and we can see some details. In the details, we get the response here. It's a 200, that's a success code, and hello from Lambda. We can see the initialization duration, the build duration, and the maximum amount of memory used. And then there's some log output. You can go over to the CloudWatch log group from here, but you can always find it as well from monitor and then view CloudWatch logs. When we do that, we can find that there has been a log group created for this particular function, and then there's a log stream, and in the log stream we can see information about those executions of the function. Okay, that's great. So what are we going to do to make this a bit more interesting? So let's go back to Lambda, click on code, and we're going to add in some more interesting code. All right, so let's just delete the code from here, and I have this code which is in the course download. So in here you will find some code, and what this is going to do is it's going to resize an EC2 instance. Now all I need to do is copy all of the code, come back and paste this in. Now we can deploy this, but what I want to do first is just copy this test event JSON from the bottom here. Okay, so just copy this bit of code from where the squiggly brackets are. I'm going to copy that and then just delete that line out. We don't need that in there anymore. And then deploy the function. So the function is deployed. We have the test event data. So let's go to test. I'm going to create a new event, and this one is going to be resize instance. And I'm going to paste in the event JSON. Coming back to instances, I want to copy my instance ID, and we're going to replace that here. Paste that in, and then we're going to save the test event. So when we run this test event, what's going to happen is the code will execute, and this code is going to attempt to modify the EC2 instance type. Okay, so it's going to do that using this code. It's going to actually change from a T2 micro to a T2 medium. Now, to do that, of course, we're going to need permissions to EC2. So let's go back to our IAM management console. We're going to add permissions, click on attach policies. Let's type EC2, and I'm just going to choose full access for this exercise. Of course, we could lock it down to exactly what we need, but for now, we're just happy with this one. So that's going to provide the permissions needed by the Lambda function. Let's come back and check our instance. It's running, and of course, it is a T2 micro. Let's come back to Resize instance. What we need to do is go to test, and then make sure that we're choosing the correct event, so Resize instance, and then run the test. Now this operation actually needs quite a bit of time, and you can see that what's happened is it's actually failed. Okay, so let's expand the details, and we need to know why. So firstly, one of the configurations, the default configurations of Lambda, is that it has a 3-second timeout. So we can see this is actually timed out after 3 seconds. So that was expected. We should have modified that beforehand, because this code actually has to wait for the instance to shut down before it can continue with the next API action, which is resizing it and then starting it back up again. If we head over to instances, we can see that our instance is in a stopped state. So it did start the process. Let's just boot it back up again, and we're going to rerun this, but we're going to change the timeout so that we have a longer timeout. Now remember, Lambda has up to 15 minutes, and that's more than enough for this particular exercise. So let's go to configuration and click on general configuration, and you can see the timeout right here. Let's click on edit, and then let's change the timeout to 1 minute. In fact, let's put 2 minutes just in case. It won't take that long. So I put it to 2 minutes and 0 seconds, and then I'm going to click on save, go back to test, and let's try this test event again. Now, of course, all the time we can always go to CloudWatch logs and find some information about what's happened. Now, if you don't see anything in this particular log stream, go back up a level to the log group, and you'll find a more recent log stream came in. And here we go. We can actually see some information about what happened. Let's expand all of those items. And here we go. Here's a report of that execution. And it tells us that it timed out. Great. So let's go back to Lambda, and we're going to run our test event again. Let's click on test. This time it should keep running. It's not going to time out. If we head over to EC2, we should see that our instance is stopping. And then next, what's going to happen is once it's stopped, it will be able to resize the instance and then boot it back up again. Back in Lambda, the function execution has succeeded. Let's look at the details. We can see a longer duration this time for this one. It's quite a long build duration. And of course, it did take a little while for that instance to shut down and then start up again. Now, if I refresh back in EC2, we should see our instance is booting up, and now it's a T2 medium. So that's a bit of an introduction to Lambda. A couple of key takeaways I would say are: one, permissions policies. This is somewhere that people trip up quite a lot. Make sure that your function has the relevant permissions that it needs to do whatever it's doing when it's talking to other AWS services. And then secondly, CloudWatch is a really great place to go and look and find out what's happening with your function. You should be able to see the full events here of a successful execution, but when you have problems, you'll find some really useful information in these logs. So really the only thing to do here is terminate our instance. That's the only thing that might cost us money. In terms of the Lambda function, you only pay when it's actually being executed.